Hello everybody, this is Havoc and welcome back to another episode of the tutorial for absolute beginners in Terra Invicta. If you watched the first episode or you stumbled upon the second episode, in the first episode we went over the user interface in general. It's not as in-depth as it could be or should be, but there are some things about Terra Invicta that honestly I am still discovering even to this day. But someone, and actually a handful of people, have suggested doing kind of your first hour, kind of what are your first moves, things of that nature. So if you're a total beginner and you're absolutely lost, go watch the user interface video and then come back here, because that's what we are going to do. So first and foremost, thank you for being here. Thank you for checking it out. I hope that it is enjoyable and informative. Now we're going to quickly roll through the new game options. For one, what you see right here is what I would recommend if you're starting out very beginning or you're just trying to get some tips and tricks. We want the modern scenario, we want the full solar system, and this is why, because if you do end up continuing this save into the space exploration and colonization, you're gonna want as many objects as possible to colonize, because if you have a lot of factions, that can get extremely competitive. You could miss out. And in my opinion, if you don't get some good asteroids or good spaces on planets, bases, etc., then you're pretty much SOL. But do know that these, as it goes down the solar system list, it has fewer and fewer objects. So currently 350 space objects is a lot, but is absolutely necessary. We are actually going to do, not going to do the resistance. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. We'll do the servants. I haven't ever done the servants. But you have your factions here. The resistance protects humanity by resisting the alien invasion. Humanity first wants to eradicate the aliens and anyone who opposes them, including other humans. The initiative exploits the aliens to gain power. The servants are here to support the aliens by any means necessary. The protectorate protects humanity by appeasing the aliens, a little different than the servants. The Academy believes that we are equals, or at least that's what they want to project. So that's what their objective is going to be. And the Exodus is like, forget this, we're going to jet out of here and go to a different solar system entirely. You can customize it, but we're not going to worry about any of that stuff. We're going to go with the servants because I've never done it and I feel it's pretty cool. And then lastly, game difficulty. We don't worry about that. We're playing on normal. I play on normal. I'm going to start the game. It's going to take a while to load. You won't see it, but I'll see you on the world map. All right, and here we are. Now, if you saw the first video on my tutorial for absolute beginners, you'll see that a lot of this stuff is vastly inferior to what that showed you. And that's because we're starting at the beginning of the game. Now, I'm 7.5 years on my Twitch run, so that's vastly different, much more complex. But regardless, here we are at the beginning. And I'm not going to go into terribly great detail on the user interface because I've simply done it before. So again, I'm going to emphasize this 100 times because it is rather in-depth. You can get lost, I feel. Go watch that first one, come back here to where you can start and be good. We will always start with a UFO crashing on Earth. It's usually in an African region, and this time it is in the country of Niger, and an alien life form escaped into the surrounding countryside. We're going to do that. This is going to be an introduction to our faction, and then we have our first objective. Now, as far as I can tell, you don't have to complete these objectives within a certain time frame, but obviously kind of the sooner the better because it does transform everything. Now, alien phenomenon, we do have our crash site, and if you click on this multi-arrow chevron with a circle, it will always take you there. You'll see it down here for Ryan Armstrong. Anytime you want to locate something, click on that. That will get you to where you go. That's very important. So we do need to investigate the crash site. Before we do, we need to take a look at our surroundings. We don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of influence or ops or boost or control points or science even. And we don't own a single control point in any country whatsoever. You are 100% safe to ignore all of these other resources. You can only acquire these resources out in space. We don't have that. So we're not worrying about it in this video. So just erase this from your mind for now. If you make it into space, then that's when you can be concerned about it. But first and foremost, we need to take a look at a couple of things. For one, we need to look at, let's go ahead and look at our councilors. So if we go over here into the council members tab, we have Ryan Armstrong, who is a scientist from Chicago, and Amita Sahu, who is a celebrity from Bangladesh. Now, if we look at these guys, if we were to click on one of them, this gives a rundown of your councilors. You will use your councilors every single turn of every single moment of this game, and I feel like that's an important thing to impress upon you. So these guys are very important, and therefore you want to understand them. Over here, we have the missions. This is one of the most important first steps for you to understand. I want you to go through and see what every single one of these does, because you do want to have a blend of agents or councilors that have a variety of missions, but you also want some of them to cross paths in certain ways. So for instance, Ryan Armstrong is good, or at least has the ability to control a nation, to try and get a control point from a nation. He can set a national policy, meaning if we have the executive control point in any country, we can tell the country what to do. The only things right now, at this very moment, that you as a player can do are really control nation and investigate alien activity. All of these other ones are not important, not in the early game anyways. So what you want to see here, control nation, every single one of the actions, well, a majority, have a stat and a spend. This means that the stat coincides with attributes. Control nation requires persuasion. However, we can spend influence to increase that chance. We'll get into that when we actually do the assignments, but that's important to try and distinguish, because his ability to control a nation is important, but his persuasion skill sucks. He's not good at that job. The other thing we can do right now is investigate an alien activity that costs 5 ops points. It's not dependent on attributes. So we have 20 ops, it costs 5. That's what we'll do there. Now it's important to look at the attributes. Again, every single one of these, for the most part, again, like I said, require certain things. Sabotage projects require espionage. Contact costs just influence. But even orbit, deorbiting, and transferring cost you boost. For the most part, like I said, you're going to coincide an attribute with the missions. And we can see here he's not good at anything regarding his missions. This is not a good counselor. Now, the best part about this counselor, though, is that he gives us 10 research a month, which means overall he's contributing 20% of our total science. And he's giving us 2 influence per month, which is a 14th. Again, not a great counselor. In fact, I'm going to do something that you probably shouldn't do, but we're going to do anyways. Well, no, we'll wait until next turn. We will use him to investigate the alien activity. If we hit the next button, we can see Amita Sahu. Now, Amita Sahu is a little bit better, and I'll tell you why. For one, her persuasion skill is a little bit higher, which is good for control nation and for public campaigns. Public campaigns are how you influence a country to make it easier for you to do actions within it. So increasing the popularity is going to be one of the ways that you have a better success chance at controlling a point. So she has a decent persuasion. It's not great. They really rolled us really bad here. But what is good about her is that she's contributing 3 money per month, which is around about 20%, but she's contributing a lot of influence. She has, I would say, what, 40%-ish of our total monthly income of influence comes from her because she's a celebrity. She's a conspiracy theorist. She's a megastar. That's where we get it from. She's prosperous, and she's also a pacifist, which is a really interesting combination. So what we need to do here, she will be our public campaign in our control nation, unless we hire another counselor. You can see we have 2 new counselors that we can recruit. This is our list of counselors, and they really rolled us awful here. Usually, there are counselors that cost 30 influence. We don't have a single counselor here that can be recruited by us this turn. Now in a month we'll get 29, so we'll be able to do that, but good lord, are they really rolling it. bad for this tutorial. But what I would suggest is that you take a look at your councillor candidates. You can look at everything about them that matters. You can see, so for instance, we want someone with good persuasion. Christopher Larkin is gonna be the best person for that. So he has a high persuasion, but here's the kicker. He doesn't have the ability to influence a nation. He would be good for control nation. So if you hired him, you could use him to gain control points, use the other lady to increase public campaigns, and then use the last guy for whatever you wanted to do. However, he does have a lot of good things. Stabilizing a nation is a really good one to keep control, etc., etc. So go through here and look at each thing and figure out if this is what you want. You want to look at their attributes, you want to look at their missions, but you also want to look at their monthly incomes because that will help you. A monthly income of 11.8 and an influence of 11.5 will almost double both of them. That is impressive. Dan Beige may be the person for you simply to give you a nice boost in the early game. You can see no one else quite has the influence that he does, and in fact, that's the person I probably will end up hiring in the next turn. But we have our two councillors. So neither of them are fantastic, I'm not gonna lie. But we know Ryan Armstrong is going to be good at, or at least he can do the investigate mission. So we're gonna go down here, investigate alien activity, and click on that button. You'll see that this is the only place that we can do it. We're gonna investigate alien activity. They flew him over there. Now, this is where it gets interesting because we don't have a good chance, I feel, of controlling any nation that matters. And so we want to do a public campaign. But where do we do it? Now, if you looked at the first episode going over the user interface, you'll know that I don't really like the nations tab. I don't like it. It's I won't say misleading, but it's too convoluted to figure things out. What I normally do is faction popularity. So this gives you the idea on who has really good faction popularity or who has control points, right? So if we look here, we'll do faction control. That's the one. You'll notice that no one has a faction. We just started the game. So how do we determine the best ones, the best nations to go into? Well, there's a few criteria, and honestly, this is where it's kind of up to you. I wouldn't necessarily follow my exact parameters because it may not be what you want to do. For one, we could search by public opinion. This allows us to see what countries have the most popular support for our faction. And we can see Mauritania has a really good 79%. That's pretty intense. And they only have one control point. Iran, Mozambique, Cameroon, Yemen, Somalia, Nicaragua, Cuba. The United Kingdom is at 6%. Oof. That's harsh. And you can see it just goes lower and lower and lower. So we may not want to worry about that because that may not help a lot. Another thing we could do is we could filter by money. We need money to do actions, so it makes sense to do that. And we can see that United States of America only has 4%, but it brings us the most money by a long shot. Not to mention, it also gives us a huge monthly boost and it gives us mission control. But the United States is extremely hard to get into, and I'll tell you why. Let's go to America. You see I clicked on it already, and we can figure out why it is that it is so hard to get into places like the United States or China or even into Europe. I said that weird. So your councillor has a rating. Our current councillor's rating is 6.7, and that's because her persuasion skill is at 5, which you can see over here, down here in her card. The popular support, which is not high whatsoever. Our popular support for the servants is only 4%. So our popular support is only lending us 0.7 points. And then because she is a pacifist, it gives her a point. So her total is 6.7. But the target is, I think this should actually be not negative 27. And maybe it's saying that it's positive here and negative there, so we'd have to get to that point. But regardless, think of it like without the plus or minus sign. The size of the national economy, which is massive for the United States of America, If we went over to, well, actually it's up here. 22, that's what, 22 trillion? Is that what it is? It's a lot of money, regardless. The size of the national economy gives them a score of 27.2. So for us to even have a chance, we have to get closer and closer to that chance, to that 27.2. And you can see, even with dumping as much influence as possible, we don't even get halfway, and that only gives us a 1% success chance. Now, a public campaign is pretty good because we have our persuasion and pacifist skill, and our target's only 10.2 because of the nation population, so the lower a population is. If we were to dump as much money as possible, that brings us above, but not enough to compensate enough. Does that make sense? So you can see here the success chance. We're not going to go for the United States. As awesome as it would be, and honestly, I'm going to give you a little tip here. It's my goal. Every time I play this, I've played 4 or 5 runs, and every time I push, once I have an established nation set, I push to get the United States because you cannot beat what they are providing. The nation who controls the United States is going to have a leg up. So how do we find a nation that we want to do that has a good success chance? Well, I'm glad you asked. We can do, let's do control nation here. And we can see because she's in Bangladesh, it's automatically going to do that. But we have a few ways of figuring out other ways. For one, you'll notice percentages. This is the percentage success chance for any nation depending on what action you have selected. So we can see here, controlling the nation, France gives us 5%. We'd have a 7% chance in London, a 50% chance in, what is that, Slovakia, a 70% chance in Turkey, etc., etc. We see over here 0%. Okay. Or to make it easier for you, if you select the left-hand column next to the action, it gives you a list based on the percentage success chance. So you will notice that we have a good success chance amidst all of the third world countries. Iceland, I don't know if you consider that third world or not, but regardless, I wouldn't really consider pushing into there if I didn't have to. I will say this, it can be enticing to go after these African countries, but in my opinion, which you're allowed to have a different one, it's not worth the investment. There is very few things in here that are so worth your points, your cap, your control point cost. For instance, Nigeria costs 10.13 per control point. And at 30 control points, which is a fifth, oh, not a fifth, wow, bad math, a fourth of our total points, we would only get 0.2 money or 18.2 science. That's not worth it. Think about this. If we were to control one of these, which is 15, we would get 1 control point would net us ballpark 0.9 money and, well, let's see, 25 science. So you can see the costs there are significantly better if you spend some time and focus on some of these other nations. All right. So just consider that when you're trying to figure out which places to succeed first. The United States is really hard. I would not focus on them at the moment. Instead, Europe, Russia, China's still hard, but maybe even India would be a good one depending on the success chance going throughout everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to go after, let's actually go after France because they do have a little bit of boost, whereas England currently doesn't. So I think that'll be good. 44% success chance right off the bat. Let's pump a little bit of money. We'll pump a fifth of our total things. That gives me a 74% success chance, right? Cool. Public campaign done. We're going to hit that. You can see she's flown there. That's what you always want to make sure of. Now you can always change them to do something else in some other country as long as you haven't hit confirm assignments. So we have both of our councilors in the bag where they need to go doing what they need to do. We're going to wait until next turn to grab another councilor because we really don't have a choice. What is there to do before we confirm or before we hit the play button is research. Now, I will say this, research is very complex. It may seem overwhelming, but it boils down to this. You have a certain number of science points, research points every day. So right now, we are contributing 1.64 science a day at 100%. That doesn't change because we're not splitting it between anything. However, were we to invest in any of these 3 global research things, it would split that up. All right. We can invest in this. Is it worth it? I think at this point, probably not. But for instance, if we were to go into We Are Not Alone, you'll see that that is split. There's 50% going towards those 2. We split again, that's 33. If we split again, that's 25. If I want to push into Mission to Space more, we can see that we've devoted 50% there, 17% elsewhere. Does that make sense? And basically what it boils down to is that whoever has the most points invested in the tech when it's researched gets to pick the new one. So I've seen in many forum posts and even on the Discord where people are like, I basically gatekeeped science expansion, which meaning that they prevented any development in space because they controlled the technology that was researched while they built up on Earth to be able to push hard and push fast once that research was taken over. That is a very valid strategy. Do not underestimate the power of gatekeeping technology in this game. You can further your own needs and go after your council engineering projects that has extreme validity. It has stuff that makes sense. But if you really want to control the game, if that's the role play style you want to push, controlling the research controls the technology and controls all the other factions. If you are the only person that determines what science gets made, that's how you do it. And if that's how you want to go, you want to pick nations that have a high science value to them. So this is what I mean. This is how you pay attention. This is how you develop your own strategies. And this is how you learn. This is why I go after the United States of America so hard. China, excuse me, is very hard to get into. India is relatively hard to get into. The United States of America, if you were to conquer it, you will have, even if someone conquered all of Germany, you would have over three times more research points. That is 418 research points per day that you could split as much as you needed between these. You can gatekeep science. It's a valid strategy. So for now, though, we're not going to worry about it. I'm going to let them do what they want to do. This doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I want to focus on my own audience research and be good with that. Of course, I could change it. Audience research gives me 25 influence, which is really good. Let's go. Yeah, let's go with that. That's fine. Cool. Now that we've selected the technology for our audience research, we cannot touch this because no one has actually technically gone ahead and researched everything. So be aware of that. There's really nothing else we can do unless you just want to strategize, which has its valid things. Go through the nations before you hit play. Determine what you want to do and come up with a valid strategy. Think about the ways you want to go, places you want to conquer, why you want to conquer them. All of those have their validity. And explore if you want to, that's fine. But what we're going to do is we're going to hit play. I'm going to do pause and I'm going to do the biggest, fastest we can go through it. And we're going to see things happen. We're going to see events happen. We're going to see your agent's actions come to fruition or fail. So be prepared for that. Let's hit the play button. All right. So now we need to select our management team. This is basically saying how we want to influence our faction. Lobbyists and influencers increases the monthly influence income by 3 in the long run. So you got to think about this for now. You need to think about how this will affect things down the road. In the early game, yes, it's important. But 3 influence in the mid game where you're making maybe 150 influence every month, that's not a lot. So I don't know that it would be worthwhile. So for me, I always go officers and operators because it increases our ops income by 3. Operations are the things that I have seen that are always in demand. Always. You will come to a point where you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, or you have thousands of influence, you have tons of boost, all of that stuff. What I have always needed and always tried to achieve was more ops. I highly recommend. This is one of those things where I will put my foot down and say this is one of those you should do's, is officers and operators. Good. So you see that increased by 0.09, which gives us a monthly income of 3. So there we go. Our public campaign was a success. The servants in France, it has gone from 1% to 7%. I'm actually going to make her repeat the mission. Now, what you can do is you can repeat the mission then that just automates the process a little bit. You can make it a permanent assignment to where Amida Sahu will always try and increase public relations. I don't know how valid that would be, but it's something you could do. I'm going to repeat it because that's what I want her to do again. Now, unfortunately, our councillor has been spotted, but that's okay. And now the UN Security Council meets, and this is another interesting faction point that will always happen. Basically, the show of unity that they had hoped for basically went down the drain, with China, Russia, and the US accusing each other of hiding knowledge. Go figure. However, we have the ability to come out into the open or remain hidden. If we remain in the shadows, nothing happens. If we quietly steer support, it grants a small public boost for the servants around the world at the cost of information being exposed. I don't think anyone has the capacity to do anything to us, so I'm not concerned about that in the early game. Now, what I am going to do this time, just for kicks and giggles, is I'm going to deliver our manifesto to the world. We are going to come out into the open and say, we are the servants. This is what we want to do. It's up to you. It takes 50 influence, which means it'll be 3 months before we're able to afford another operative. Is that worth it right now? With everything being 60? No. So as much as I want to, it's not a smart choice. We can quietly steer support. And so if we pause and take a look, we were at 7%, now we're at 8%. So it's not a huge boost, but it's still one that works. And then Ryan Armstrong did the objective, and that was complete, which gave us a boost of 20 influence and 20 science. Now that science was boosted, and here it was a main boost. It wasn't a boost overall. Now, unfortunately, the emissaries are long gone by the time our councillor arrived. We must be cautious. Others are active in the area and seek to track the emissaries for purposes of their own. We can't afford to lead them to their goal. Cool. So our objective is complete. Now we need to study their science. I'm sure the scientists and engineers poring over the wreck will come to some mechanical explanation, but don't you think it's strange that another species should suffer such an inexplicable accident? We learned the secrets of flight only in the 20th century, yet our passenger aircraft were as close to perfectly safe as any method. The emissaries are far more skilled in space, so what would they brought down on one of their ships? So now we have another objective, and that is study the signs, allow faction to detect alien abductions on Earth. So that's what we need to, that's a project we could push for. And then One Humanity basically says, hey, we're going to unite for a little bit before we dissolve. All right. So as you see here, she already has her action done. Ryan is suggesting that Russia has an open control point and has a good boost to income. Let's see if that is true. We have a 3% chance. Even if we put it in 64 influence, it wouldn't work. That's not a good idea. Ryan, unfortunately, isn't a good fit. He really just isn't. He serves very, very little purpose. He doesn't have the capacity to control things very well at all, which is unfortunate because it basically means that Ryan Armstrong is going to get fired, but not before we recruit someone who can be useful to us. Now, Christopher Larkin has a lot of persuasion, but he also doesn't have the ability to influence nations. Well, I thought, oh, who did we want to have? That's right. Dan Beige is a tycoon. Will join us in Auckland, New Zealand at the cost of 60 influence. He can control a nation, he can purge, defend interests, he can even go to ground, which is fine by us. And he also brings in a lot of money and influence. So this is at 0.45, this is at 1. We're going to recruit him. And you can see that that doubled just about, and that went up by about 50%, which is great. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to dismiss Ryan Armstrong. He can't do anything for us, he just can't. And now that allows us to have an opportunity to recruit someone else. So Dan, hello, welcome, how are you? If we go to control nations, we can see how our influence is going to work. What does it look like to grab New Zealand? Science is down. We don't hardly get any money, so that's not worth it. If we go up here, we can see still Mauritania, all of those things. I don't even know that Uruguay is worth it. And things get slowly and steadily less influential for us as we get to some of these bigger countries. If we looked at Norway, I think Norway actually is a pretty decent place. Norway doesn't bring in any income, unfortunately. If we were to push our influence, that's not going to work. We don't really have anywhere that we can purge, not with any efficiency. So let's go ahead and try and grab France. It's not going to work, but that's okay. We're basically just allowing them to do their own things while we wait for enough influence to build up. Again, nothing else to do. I will see you once these missions have succeeded or failed. All right, so public campaign worked again. We're going to repeat it again. And that actually gives him a 1% increase in chance of success. Control nation is always the last mission that happens. So we'll be okay. Now, operatives have detected as someone within the Seoul region of South Korea acting as a councillor. That's okay. One thing I forgot to mention, your success chance goes up against a dice roll. Yes, this is just like XCOM 2. Yes, I have had a 98% chance of success, and the dice roll was a 99%. It is incredibly frustrating. But just so you know, that is how it operates. You have your success chance, and then you have your dice roll. In this case, they rolled a 69, which is very nice, but it vastly beats our 5%. All right, I don't have quite enough money yet to buy another advisor. But what we can do is we can look at the organization marketplace for our councillors. The organization marketplace, depending on our people, allows us to enhance our nation, our faction, I guess if you want to call it, by taking on organizations. So for instance, for 88 bucks, right, we have 89.5. I could get the Sargas mining group, which gives me 14 monthly income, which almost doubles my income, or at least 50%. Also provides a 1% boost to the economy, a 2% to spoils, and a space mining outpost. The Hercules semiconductor gives investigation, and espionage at the cost of 75 money and 15. Now, she has the same perks, so it's not like we're missing out on anything. I think we're going to go ahead and purchase this. And I went from 0.84 to 1.3. Perfect. All right, there's nothing else we can do there. We are actually going to have him try to do that again. Establishing control. And she is going to increase the public opinion again. We've met the resistance. Fantastic. Awesome. Public campaign is 15%. Fantastic. I love it. Will it be enough for him to control a point, though? It's at 5%. Nope. That's okay. All right. We now have 60 influence, so we're going to look to hire someone. I don't know if these have changed or not. But regardless, I would like someone with a good high persuasion that has the public campaign and the control nation. This is the perfect guy for us. He has a lot of money. He has a lot of influence. A decent persuasion. Okay investigation. Administration is great. That's a very good thing. It increases our control points. And he has, of course, some very nice little attributes. Or traits, rather. Awesome. We did that. So now we have two people. We have two people who can focus on public campaigns. Let's toss. We actually have very little money. It's a 66% chance there. No, I don't want to control the nation. I want to do success or a public campaign. And then Dan Beige, let's go ahead and pump one in there. Awesome. We met some more factions. A lot of factions are apparently interested in France. It's a bit unfortunate for us. So having two campaigns going in the same place is great. 17%, 21%. And you can see we're not the most, but we're getting close to being there. And now we have a 9% chance. See, this is what I mean. How frustrating is that? 9% chance and it rolled in 11%. Now let's see faction controls. So it looks like Germany, who has a massive presence, has taken over the entirety of Germany, which really sucks for us. Or the Academy, excuse me. I said Germany. Elsewhere, it looks like the United Kingdom is being taken over quite quickly, which is unfortunate. And it looks like the initiative has had their first successful control points there. It's a little, it stinks. It makes me sweat just a little bit. But I think we'll be able to control in no time. Let's try it one more time. Success. She failed, that's okay. But now Dan has a 22% chance and an enemy fleet has been detected. Oof. That's not good. That's bad news, Bears. Actually, for us, it's great news. Never mind. We're getting closer. And now we have to select an advisory team. Now, I always go with steely-eyed missile women. This is one of those deals where I don't quite understand the game. This focuses on investment points. Every nation has a certain number of investment points, which I do believe happens per month, right? You, having control of different control points, can affect what gets made here. What gets priority, what gets done, etc., etc. Now, what I don't know is that, is it really, honestly, that if I have, let's say I have 3 of these control points and I'm making 5 points per turn, that I could do 1 turn in the economy and it will work? That's what I don't understand, and that's one of the very confusing parts about the user interface and user experience for Terra Invicta. But know that I do steely-eyed missile women because that's space flight and it boosts, or does the boost thing, which is what we really, really want. Sung Su. Public campaign. Public campaign. Control the point. 29% chance, okay. And global research is done for one of the things. We didn't do it, so it doesn't affect us. The public mission public campaign did not go well. There are other factions at work here, unfortunately. Awesome. So we rolled a 25, they rolled a 6. So we were able to nab one of the points. And now you'll see that some things have gone up. We are currently receiving 1.4 money a month, or daily, excuse me, 23 science per day, and then 0.04. So we're officially on the board for boost. Now that's not a lot, and honestly, the more we do, the more higher chance we get of doing all those things. We are going to go, there is no success chance for purging at the moment. We're gonna pump our influence there to try and get that campaign done. And we're gonna hope that those success changes happen. Awesome, let's repeat that. That's at 31% now. Ooh, they rolled a 63, that's hard. Dan has a 39% chance. We have another, or no, that's Victor 1, cool. Our friends are here. And that failed. And now another UFO crashes on Earth. So we have the ability to bring someone and put them in charge there. Currently, only one person can investigate a crash. We are going to send her there. And Dan, I am going to pump influence into you. Now, we are tanking our influence, which is something that's certainly needed. But at the same time, we really need to nab the executive branch of France in order for things to work in our favor. So I think it's just very important, honestly. Out of all the things we could do, this is definitely one of the more important ones. 33%, which gives him an extra increase as well. Sweet, we have the audience research, and now we can do alien signatures. It's only going to cost 25, which means we'll finish that in just a few days. We have research from another faction. We've investigated. Awesome. We have 2 of the 4 control points. That was very close. We rolled a 34, they rolled a 31. Now we also have an army under our control. In fact, the only army, which is very, very good for us. We control a majority, so now we get 2.9 money. We get 46 science, which is a really big leap for us. and we get 0.085 boost. That's great. That's fantastic. And we've only used 29 of 139 there. Now, what we could do is we could try and purge. I don't think it'll work very well. That's not worth it. We have our army, but we don't need to see it. We could go ahead and boost public opinion there if we wanted to. But I almost wonder if there's somewhere around here that would be better for us to look into. Now, Norway's okay. Sweden's okay. If I remember my Kazakhstan. Yes, Kazakhstan has a huge number of boosts. And that has a 29% chance. Hold on. I'm wondering, this is one of those things that's a little confusing. We are part of a union. Now, whether it is, okay, it is a federation. So that means we would only get the benefits. The nation is part of a federation. It shows the shared funding and boost granted to the nation. They're substitutes for the domestic ones. So we don't want to go here. That wouldn't be worth it because we'd only get a little bit of boost. Just a little bit. This would be good. This would be something we would want to invest into if we could. But maybe we start with a public campaign. And then Dan Beige. No, I don't want you to do that because there's no success chance of doing it. Instead, I would like you to control nations. And we may go after Benelux. There's a decent chance there. Let's confirm the assignment. We've met Project Exodus now. Whether or not we get it, I have no idea, but it'd be pretty cool if we did. Public campaign worked in France. Did not work in Russia. And we somehow rolled a high enough chance to nab that. And now we've completed the alien signatures by cross-referencing reports. We have developed a tracking system to reliably identify disappearance. There's nothing else we can really do right now because people haven't researched enough stuff. We've not completed that objective. And this is what we need to do. Conduct surveillance missions in regions near any alien crashes. Send a counselor to investigate the collision at that location. Let's go ahead and do audience. Well, let's do commercial. There we go. Now we could start investing in some things here as well. They're already doing outpost shipbuilding. Let's go ahead and split that pretty heavily. That works for me. And then we got to wait for the rest of the turn. Our control point in France should be better protected. I agree. We'll do that in just a minute. 38% success chance. Let's go ahead and do a public campaign over there. And then as for Amita, let's do... Yeah, we'll go ahead and publicly support this one. We can now do clandestine cells, which gives us another counselor, by the way, which is really great. Social science lab, all right. People are doing loads of research in the best of ways. Benelux, awesome. Awesome as well. 16%, that's fantastic. Ooh, rolled a 93, that's harsh. We've detected an enemy counselor. Let's go ahead and boost public campaign. Let's see what Dan does. 60%, oh, nope, we don't want to do that. Not in Italy. I accidentally clicked on Italy, didn't I? No, Benelux has a 29% chance. All right, let's try it one more time. New project, military science lab. Nice. Very nice again. 37% chance now. Awesome. We were able to snag that away, which is fantastic. All right, and so I don't want to quit it right here necessarily, but I think it's a good spot because it simply shows kind of your first starting things. We have a few control points. We have 52 out of 139 there. We're making some decent income. It's not too bad, but this will give you a good, a good grip on what you need to do. Brazil, that's fine. You guys can hang out there. That's totally cool. But as for me and my house, again, I would try focusing soon on the United States. It takes a lot to influence them. You can see Project Exodus is already working on them. The higher it is that your popularity is, the greater chance you will have for that. But other than that, your next first step should be continuing to expand into different countries, work on different counselors. We now have some new counselors that you can pick from, including Florist Bronzeware. Beefy looking dude. Outside of that, pay attention to your intel to see who has what. see where people are at. So you can see we actually have the most money. We almost have the most influence. We certainly are getting, actually we don't control that much for that. And then science, Project Exodus has some good places. Excuse me. Focus on that. Check out the research and see where and how you can do things. Check out your nations to know where things are going. Eventually, when you get out into space, enjoy figuring that out because it's complex, but it's also absolutely awesome, and I love it. It's such a great in-depth game. But for now, you're going to focus on the nations game. Try and develop as much public support. Try and nab the United States or even China if you can get into there easier. Do what you can to build up. That's what the early game is. It's about building up and taking advantage of the best things. So when you get the space, you can do it. Boost is very, very important to get into space in the early game before you're getting the space resource. Guys, that's all I'm going to do now for their first steps. I hope this gives you a pretty good basic idea on where to go, how to do it, all of those things. If you enjoyed this tutorial, be sure to let me know by leaving a comment in the comment section down below, or you can show your support by subbing to the channel, turning on the notifications, or becoming a YouTube member. Any of those things work. None of them are expected though. Guys, thank you again so much for hanging out with me with this tutorial. Hope you found it enjoyable. This is Havoc, and I'll see you in the next one.